Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Bull City Coordinators Duke Football Coverage Podcast. Follow us on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Check us out on Twitter and most all the socials at Duke FB Coverage. Send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. You know where to find us. You know where to listen. We're everywhere you get your podcast. Before we get into our next guest, who is returning to update us on the bowl game that just got announced, the Birmingham Bowl, and also talk a little bit about the whirlwind week he has had, talk a little bit about the head coaching situation. We're going to get to Steve Wiseman here in a second because I'm a history major and my area of focus in college was American Cold War politics. When I listened to Boo Corrigan give the explanation for FSU getting the shaft and getting left out of the college football playoff, and then him turning around and saying Liberty got the bowl game, it got because it just kept winning. It reminded me of, and this is not a comment on Boo personally, who I don't know, it just gave off very strong Harry Truman describing Richard Nixon vibes and made me think of my favorite all-time Harry Truman quote, which is, Richard Nixon is a no-good lying bastard. He can lie out of both sides of his mouth at the same time, and if he ever caught himself telling the truth, he'd lie just to keep his hands in. One of my absolute favorite quotes, and man, when I heard Boo say Liberty just kept winning, I immediately thought of that quote because, boy, FSU just kept winning 3 games, okay? Against what is supposedly, one of which was against supposedly a team from the greatest conference of all time, and won against a ranked opponent in a conference championship game with a third-string quarterback, and they are holding the bag. So anyway, Steve Wiseman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Ben, and I appreciate you having me back on. And I really appreciate the history lesson there. That's fantastic. I'm a amateur historian, I guess, of Cold War times too. So I appreciate that quote. And that's something else. Boo was can I say this about Liberty real quick since you mentioned Liberty?
Say whatever you
just
want.
because I vote in the top 25 poll. I'm on one of the panels, nationwide panel. And it took me forever to put Liberty in my top 25. In fact, I didn't do it till the very last week because they didn't play any Power 5 teams all year. And I thought, you got to challenge yourself. I mean, they've done it in the past. They didn't do it. So just to further your point, yes, they kept winning, but Florida State did it against better teams and at a higher level and all that. So, maybe Liberty will go out and prove me completely wrong when they play their bowl game. I'd be really surprised who they're playing. But anyway, so that when you said Liberty, that reminded me of that that's how wrong the committee got it. Just wrong.
And SMU, who played much better competition,
right?
Arguably should have been matched up against Oregon. And they beat Tulane, which had been ranked almost all season, right?
Yes.
They had
Tulane had a lot of guys back from the team that won the Cotton Bowl and beat Southern Cal last year. So they were in the rankings almost the entire year. They were on my radar the whole time. I know they were in my ballot almost every week. And then I started putting SMU in 2 or 3 weeks ago when they started moving up in the so yeah, I mean the committee, Boo didn't even help out SMU again. They helped out SMU a few months ago when they flipped their vote and let them in the ACC, and and this time they couldn't come through.
It really felt like the whole time that Boo was really locking up a spot for NC State in the Big 20. That's what it felt like listening to him talk. And then eventually I had to turn it off because, this is all, at least the way it feels, is it's all generated for rankings and clicks and engagement the way ESPN does it. And they have cameras there, and then they make poor Mike Norvell have to talk, and all those guys immediately do press conferences. And it just, to me, the way that the selection show was handled was really a disservice to the teams and really unfair. And I thought, by the way, the kind of, I may put this in a reel on Instagram, so I won't say exactly what I want to say, but the kind of softballs to Jim Harbaugh. No questions about Connor Stallions. No questions about him cheating. I mean, someone should have said, I appreciate that you're thanking God and Jesus, but do you want to say anything to Connor Stallions? I mean, do your job as journalists. I mean, it was just disgraceful. And you got Kirk Herbstreit just sitting there carrying the water for the SEC. I mean, it just the only guy I thought with any Robert Griffin III, Dan Mullen, and Booger McFarland, I thought all were very reasonable and discussed it fair. But other than that, it was just let's just dump on the ACC.
Yeah, because the guys that those three you mentioned like remembered what it was like to be in games and win games and go through adversity and have injuries to key players and find a way to win anyway and all that. That's what this is supposed to be about. Somebody else wrote, and there's been so many takes you've seen the last 24 hours, but it became figure skating. It became figure skating. Like, let's get the good match up here. We can finagle this and get this. And we don't want to have, TCU in the championship game again and, have a blowout. It's over in the first quarter. So we're going to, we got to get Alabama in there because they're the better team right now. Because they're the better team right now. We think they haven't played Florida State. We don't know, but they can guess. But,
yeah, we could go on for a really long time about that. And, I think David Hale, read his column about it. I thought he wrote a very good piece on it.
Yeah.
But where is Jim Phillips? Someone should start a website. Where is Jim Phillips? What is Jim doing? I mean, he should be on the ACC network weekly. He should be on the OG podcast. He should be on Adam Gold. He should be on every related media to a network, any sort of network near an ACC team. He should be in Pittsburgh. He should be in Syracuse. You want to count Notre Dame? He should be near Louisville. I mean, it really denigrates what Florida State did against a good Cardinals team.
Right.
Just shut them down.
Right. It all started with Louisville losing to Kentucky. That kind of tainted it. That started this process, I think. Well, Jordan injury. I mean, the injury started the process, but that continued. That was a big step in this too. But the whole idea about Jim Phillips, like the whole reason why you have your own network is for these situations. And our columnist, Luke DeCock, wrote one today, a column this morning about this whole situation that, ESPN is ACC's partner and they just abandoned the ACC. Like you mentioned earlier, I mean, the whole just carrying the water for the SEC. They're the ones that make all the more money. So we're going to help them. We're going to be on their side. We're going to support their cause. And I mean, it's not even journalism. You mentioned it's not. I mean, I'm a journalist. I understand that they weren't practicing journalism in that situation at all. It was an infomercial. And anybody who's been the chairman of a committee or been on a committee with a chairman or chairperson, their job is to lead the group. And you either follow a strong leader or they're, worthless basically. So I'm not sure what Boo didn't seem to lead. If he did lead them, he's got to own this. Like it's all on him. Right. And maybe he's doing that by saying, I don't know. Thing about Liberty and Florida State. Let's go back to that. That's him talking out of both sides of his mouth. So tough day for the ACC. Tough 24 hours.
Correct. Well, let's talk about your week. So it's been chill, but let me just say this before we get started. Let's roll it back to the Sunday night before Elko says he's leaving.
Yeah.
I start seeing this stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to know you over the times we've been on the podcast, and you're always very responsive, which I appreciate. You're always willing to come on here, which I know you don't have to do, and I appreciate that. And around 4 or 5 o'clock, I send you a text, and I said, Steve, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. What's going on? Because the reason I bring it up is from talking with guys like you listen to Connor O'Neill on the Big J, Little J podcast, and some other guys who are much closer to the program than I am. I mean, I'm just a fan. I admit that. But everybody that I talked to, yourself included, was all of the mindset, Elko is going to be here probably 4 years. I mean, he's going to be here for a bit. He really likes it here, So when I saw the stuff about A&M, I'm thinking to myself, no, he's not going to leave to A&M. So I text you, and then your response was basically Samuel L. Jackson in Jurassic Park. Hold on to your butts. Okay. Right.
Because it changed quickly.
Right. You texted back and you're like, not to worry you, but you might want to take this one seriously. And so
Yeah.
I texted back and I said, well, I wasn't going to open that bottle of wine, but I am now. And then I get up in the morning because, I'm over 40. So everyone knows why men get up when they're over 40. And it's like
Right.
3:30. And I said to myself, don't check your phone. Just don't do it. I checked my phone and you were kind enough, Steve, to send me a text at like 3:04 in the morning and
Yeah.
say, he's gone.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. That was very nice of you. You had a lot going on, but that was kind of my night. But you weren't done. I saw you, or I listened to you on the OG podcast the next day, and Joe Ovius said, you awake? Did you get any sleep?" And then I listened to your voice. You sounded exhausted. I mean, you
Yeah.
you sounded beat. So here's what I want to ask you about. We'll get into the bowl game as well, but this week, the coaching change, the bowl game. I mean, just for you covering this, what has it been like?
Yeah. This is where, you really have to grind. You really have to, part of it is like November anyway is a grind because basketball starts up, football's still going on. So you have all that stuff, everything, two sports at once, two major sports that you're covering. So I'll be, flying to basketball games in the middle of the week, like going to Chicago when Duke played Michigan State, and then back on the weekend for a football game, that kind of thing. So that makes it difficult. And so part of what that Sunday was all about was it was like, okay, we've made it to the end of the regular football season. I don't have to worry about like getting ready for a game the next week. We were reporting on the other team and got basketball. I got a trip to Arkansas, right? And I've got a trip to Atlanta for Georgia Tech. So I know I'm going to have some travel, but okay, we're going to know what the bowl game is that Sunday. And we're going to do this because, I'd had some conversations with Elko, me and a couple other guys that you've mentioned, reporters that cover the team closely. And he kind of given us that indication that, hey, as long as they give me what I want here, I'm happy. I'll stay here. This is good, and so far they're doing that. And, I've gotten to know, and I know everything is at that moment, like what he meant at that moment. Right. So this was, I don't know, 10 days before he left. We had this conversation and, it sure seemed like everything was going well. Michigan State didn't seem like a real thing. In fact, he had told us, nothing's really going on, at that time. And, the A&M thing was out there. They were going through some other candidates. I think they always thought he was kind of their safety net. And he doesn't really care if he's the first choice for a job. That's not his deal. He's like, whatever. If I get the job I want, I don't care if I'm 20th or 40th. I'll take it. And he also told us that he wouldn't use a job offer for leverage. So not to get ahead of what we're talking about here, but you asked me about my week, and I guess I'm backtracking a little bit here.
No,
so,
go. I mean, let's just tell. I kind of think of this as sort of I shouldn't say chronicle because that's a bad joke given the name of the student paper, but
yeah,
I like to think of this as an opportunity just to tell stories. So
yeah.
So let's just tell it.
Yeah. He said he wouldn't use it for he didn't believe in using job offers for leverage, but he said he would always listen if somebody called. He goes, like he said, he mentioned that Northwestern had called during the season, and he listened to him, and he said no. Like he goes, you always have to listen when people offer things, right? At least hear them out, because you never know what they're going to say. But so I knew he would talk to these people, that other schools, he would at least listen to them. And, A&M really struck a chord with him. They really, it's a place where his family had been before. And so I know that he had some talks with Duke on that last day and deep into the night as we were trying to figure out what was going on. And, I kept hearing, other reporters said it's likely done, or he's expected to be hired, that kind of thing. I was hearing that, it was a serious thing, like I told you, but 9-10 o'clock, like he still hadn't decided. And it really wasn't until 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess, maybe when I got the text that, yeah, he's going to get on the plane and go. So that's how that came to be. So I had to work on my story for the next couple hours in the middle of the night. I tried to get a little bit of sleep too. But that middle of the night get up to go thing, I didn't have to worry about because I was up. So that worked out that way. But so then it was like, okay, now we got a coaching search. Here we go. So it was a little stunning, to be honest with you, because I really thought he was going to stay for at least this next cycle. I thought he would stick through to year 3.
So what was it? And part of the reason that I'm asking this is I don't necessarily want to look backwards, but as a fan of the program who spends more time discussing it than probably is healthy, I want to, if we get another coach, not lose a coach for the same reason that we lost Elko. So can you walk us through what it was that, to your knowledge, caused Elko to say, okay, I'm leaving this time, whereas I'm not going to take the Michigan State or the Northwestern jobs?
He felt like he could win a national championship. He had everything in place, infrastructure, money. Well, money's everything, right? But boosters with a quick strike fund. If somebody's in the transfer portal, you need to go get them. I mean, I know what we're talking about here is technically illegal by NCAA rules, but let's face it, this is what's going on with NIL money, right? Nobody's kidding ourselves. This is free agency, and that's what's come to college sports now. So I know that he thought, Duke had a pretty good collective going, and but there was still some maybe not as much expediency with football as maybe you would have in basketball or other sports, but mainly basketball. And then it's just, Duke is a deliberative place, right? They take their time with the process, and it's a strength of the university. Let's face it, in all aspects of it. But maybe in this modern world now, it was hard to adjust to, oh my gosh, we have to put together money to get players now. That's not something that was allowed forever, and it was steadfastly against the rules. And now that's where we are. So I know that was one thing that was on his mind, and he said, frankly, he said no matter where he coached, you have to be concerned about this. But at A&M, you had fewer concerns, than you do at a place like Duke or many other places. I mean, the amount of money they have down there to throw at problems is enormous.
That's the kind of client you want as an attorney because they can pay you, but it's also the kind of client you hate because they have more problems than they need. And that can be really frustrating. But one thing I want to ask you about, apparently Duke not moving as fast, it's that explanation I'd heard start coming out, I guess, from his camp about the NIL stuff, maybe it not being where he wanted and everything. He had an extension through 2029. He's completing year 2 of his contract. If it were year 4, if it were year 5, and he had us in a bowl every single year and the school still hadn't adjusted, I could see that. To me, though, it's like year 2 of a marriage, and I'm just not going to give it a chance because we had a disagreement about what restaurant we were going to eat at. That's kind of what it felt like to me when I started hearing that.
That's a very good explanation, and I think it's a good analogy. And that's why it did surprise me. It really did. I really didn't think he would go in this cycle based on what he had said and the way he's an incredibly smart guy. He's involved in everything. He knows what's going on. He knows modern football. He's a great motivator, teacher, all that kind of stuff. So I knew he would examine everything. And, the money that A&M, as far as his salary, isn't like, this isn't something that doubled or tripled what he was making at Duke. I mean, that was something that I think was a concern, when those schools used to pay 10, 12 million. Well, his base salary is only 7 million.
Yeah.
Which isn't that much more than what he was making at Duke. There are incentives in there to where if he gets to the playoff and wins the game, he can make 11, 12 million a year if they win the national championship. So the money that money's there. If he goes out and does what he says he's going to do, he'll make that much, make double or triple what he made at Duke. But it's not there in the base. And so it wasn't like they came in and blew him away with all this guaranteed money. This isn't Jimbo's contract. This is a different contract. So that did surprise me. I didn't think he'd make a move solely for money, but I guess it was just that, he never, and this is a little bit of me, maybe some speculation based on, knowing him a little bit, knowing what he's about. He'd never been a head coach anywhere, right? He gets to Duke. They give him his first job, head coaching job. He's spectacularly successful by any measure. And now he's like, okay, well, I can do this, because you never know if you can do it until you do it, right? So the opportunity is there, and because I have to think, if he had turned down Texas A&M, another really good job was going to come his way. Maybe this cycle, surely the next 2 years, right? Next 2 cycles. So that's why this did. I mean, I'm with you. This surprised me that he went in this quickly.
A couple of things I wanted to follow up on, and I'm not going to transition as well as I'd hoped because I want to stay in order. But you mentioned he was a smart guy. And one thing to keep in mind is he's smart enough to know that he can backslide. Okay. If he stays at Duke, you look at the roster now, how many people were going to leave. There is a better than even chance that next year they may not hit 6 wins. I mean, there's a lot to replace. As a coach, you're always thinking about your next contract, which I get. And anybody who complains about Elko leaving for the money, that's a hollow complaint. You're in it to make money. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I had a paralegal who was fantastic. Rachel, if you're listening, I would love to have you back, but you left to go to law school. Not going to complain about that. Go do what you got to do. If you think it's better for you, go succeed. It's a reflection on, frankly, Duke. If you succeed, I think a good reflection. Doesn't bother me that he left for the money, but I'm just curious, in the back of his mind, you look at some other coaches who hang around at a school, maybe don't leave when the iron's hot. I mean, if he goes 5-7 or 4-8 the next couple of years, do you think that maybe had something to do with it, of him looking at his roster saying, could take me a little bit to get these guys back up? I can't go buy someone in the portal. I'm going to strike while the iron's hot.
That very well may, yes, that could have been it. Because I do know they have a lot, there's a lot to replace. He got everybody to come back and buy in for this year's team. Guys that could have gone on, and Graham Barton could have gone to the NFL last year. More likely, he had offers in NIL that were unbelievable to go to other bigger schools. I mean, this isn't telling tales out of school anymore. Like with this stuff, this is real. This is free agency I mentioned earlier. And so, I mean, there's a guy right there. He got all these guys to buy in, and it'd be hard to do that again. Barton's going to the NFL. I mean, he still has 1 year of eligibility because of COVID, but he was going to go to the NFL. They were starting to prepare in the summer, I was told, for Riley maybe departing. Now, at that time, it looked like maybe to the NFL, but with the injuries and everything, and he's decided to go to another school. Now they were building, they have Henry Beelan, and now they know what Grayson Loftus is. So they were starting to get prepared for it, but that's how far ahead they were thinking, right? When it came to positions and key spots and what they're going to have to do for next year. So yeah, I mean, 8-4, 7-5, 7-5 against a very tough schedule with a lot of key injuries. I mean, if we go back to the summer, I think we knew. No, I thought 6 wins would be the tops this year, even if everybody was healthy, right? So they did a great job, but the job to do it again, was going to be difficult with all the people all the veteran players they had on this year's team.
And you mentioned that you talked about the buy-in, and I mentioned this. Whoever told Adam Gold to reach out to me, thank you. That was a great time. I love being on his show. But I did mention that you got a lot of people to buy in. You got a lot of people to come back. You really squeezed all you could out of that eligibility. And this, I think, is where a lot of Duke fans are upset, is you are leaving the school at the worst possible time, and you left the place that gave you your chance to be a head coach and prove you could do it, and you leave the way that you leave. That, I think, has a lot of people justifiably upset. And I'm just curious, can you give us any insight as to how that midnight abandoning the embassy at Saigon departure kind of came about? Because that, to go back to the Cold War era,
yeah,
that's the vibes that really gives off. And I just don't think that you treat the place that gave you your chance that way. And I'm not going to compare me leaving the law firm that I started out with to that, but I handled it very differently. And I paid a lot of money back to that firm when I left on cases that closed after I left because I thought it was the right thing to do. And the way that he left to me did not jibe with the way that you should treat the program, especially when you're hearing rumors about, I'm not going to decide for another 24 hours.
Right. Right. And I thought the 24-hour window thing jibed with what he presented himself and the way he acted the 2 years he was here. He was always very open. He communicated well. You could trust him at his word, that kind of stuff. I mean, I never had any other example of that being the opposite. But until this situation, and I was quickly told, this won't be 24 hours. He'll be. I may have texted you. I can't remember, but if I didn't, I'm sorry for thinking that. But saying that like this isn't going to take 24 hours. This is going to be done quicker than that. So I thought, okay, well, this is really serious. Like he's really, they're putting the pressure on him. Part of it was because A&M had been turned down by so many people, and they got, frankly embarrassed by the Mark Stoops thing. They thought they had that done, and
the palace coup.
I mean, we all dodged a bullet. I mean, we all thought we dodged a bullet. I thought my day was going to be easier on Sunday because I thought, well, Stoops is going to take A&M. I don't have to worry about that one. But that didn't work out. So they put the full court press on. They had the plane here. They had the AD here, in the triangle to get this deal done.
Really?
And they all flew back. Yeah. Overnight on that overnight flight that the AD got off that plane too. If you've seen the video, but yeah, they had their guy and they wanted to get him. They wanted to get it done, and they wanted to get him back there. Once he's on the plane and gone, it's hard to change your mind. It's hard to, they wanted to get this deal done and plan their celebration for the next day. If he just could have hung out, I mean, this is like, we're talking like, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when we're getting this wrapped up, and then he gets on the plane to go, because he got off the plane there, I think at 3 o'clock Central, I believe is when that was. If he could have hung out till 9 o'clock, he could have met with the players. And I think that's what leaves Duke folks with kind of a sour feeling internally and externally at the school, is that the way it came down, the way that was done. It wouldn't have taken much to do the right thing, like you mentioned. And, I know other schools, you have to do, I guess, what your new boss wants, but I would think if they wanted him bad enough, they would have waited till 10 o'clock for him to be on that plane. Right.
Well, so tell us a little bit about where the 24-hour discussion came from and why he couldn't wait till the next day to meet with the players. And I know people talk about Spurrier stayed through the bowl game. It was a slightly, it was a slightly different era then. And look, you can't compare Spurrier because he's going back to his alma mater where he won a Heisman. Okay.
Right,
I mean, that's different, and you can't always do that, especially with the portal and with recruiting. And there's got to be a fix to that. We go on for a long time about it. I don't want to do it. But where did the 24-hour period come from? And then who nixed the idea of him being able to meet with his players?
Well, he had met with them at 4 o'clock on Sunday, and that was a previously scheduled meeting. They were going to have that meeting whether he was involved with another school or not. That was the day after the last game. Hey guys, here's what we're doing. Here's where, get ready for, here's your workout schedule. Here's, get ready for bowl practices are going to start this day, all that kind of stuff. Right. So, but he got together and he told him, hey, I've got this offer, I'm probably going to need 24 hours to decide. So, but I'll, on that, he did stick to his word, because he said he'd let him know within 24 hours, and he did. So, it didn't stretch out any longer than that. But then A&M has their plane here. They're ready for him to go. And when they say go, you go. And So I don't know how, I do not know how hard he fought or put up the resistance to this midnight flight. I don't know that. But that's what happened.
So why couldn't he meet with his players the next day? One, and then two, how did the Zoom meeting come about? And three, how was that received?
Yeah, I don't think it was received very well.
It's an easy answer. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
shocked you said that.
because by then it was like, wait a minute. I mean, there was a lot of anger already. People going to bed and waking up and finding out,
Well,
right? Kind of,
Jamie on Franklin's tweet about it was
yeah,
he basically said, "What am I waking up to?"
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
And this is a guy that's known Elko since high school because he recruited him to Notre Dame. They go back a long way, and so that's somebody with a long relationship that he was really hurt, by how that went down. So, yeah, that's the general feeling going on in that building, in the O building, and among the players. So, yeah, he just, A&M had their welcoming party set for him the next afternoon, and they flew him and the family up there, for that celebration, and then they all came back that next night, the night after that celebration, except for Mike. He stayed obviously in College Station to get going in his new job, but that's how that all came to be.
So the Zoom meeting just was the result of this is the only way I can meet with you guys now.
Yeah,
And did A&M say, sorry, you're with us now, this is what's going to happen, or did Elko? I mean, what?
I
It's
don't
just
know that. I
okay.
don't know that. I'm sorry, I don't know that detail exactly. How who set it up? Who dictated this is what you could do? But once he was already on the plane and going, I mean, it was really the only option at that point was the Zoom, and
But
so
but you would think Duke would have said, yeah, you can come meet with these guys at least, right? I mean, there wouldn't have
yeah,
been resistance to that. I can imagine some schools might say, no, you're gone, get out of here. But I'd suspect Duke would say, no, it's fine. You can say bye to them.
absolutely. I have no doubt that would have happened if they wanted that to happen. They weren't going to let him do it at 1 o'clock in the morning, but the next morning, uh, because Duke is a morning practice team, the kids don't have class in the morning until I think 11:45. Usually their first practice or first class responsibility of a day. So he had plenty of time in the morning to do it if he wanted to.
So Nina King just has to be ecstatic that she's doing this again, right?
Yeah,
Which I think she's handled this fantastically. I mean, I think she has been great. I think as far as if you're looking for leadership and signs of leadership, I thought she spoke for about 2.5 minutes the next day,
yep,
kept it short and sweet. I thought she hit all the points she needed to hit, and she didn't say anything that would embarrass anybody. And she conveyed a sense. It was clear. I don't want to say terse. That might be too strong. You could tell she wasn't happy, but she was putting it in the rearview mirror, which I mean, look, she's got a JD. I'm a practicing attorney. I thought her communication, because that's big for me, right?
yeah,
We'll talk more about this with the coaching search, but the way she communicated it screamed to me leadership. So how is she approaching getting the Blue Devils a new head coach? And if
right.
you could do breaking news right now and tell us who it is, go right ahead.
I wish I could because I would do it. Uh, I don't know who the new coach is going to be as we sit here right now. So, but I do know that uh, she did handle that. She showed leadership by she met with the players. She met with on Zoom with the committed players and their families and the players' families. That's what Monday was all about. Obviously, they were getting the search going, but she also wanted to assure the people that were in the program and those that have pledged to be part of the program that Duke's going to be okay. We're going to find a new coach. We found Elko. We'll find another good one. It's going to be all right. And that I want to mention that again too, because after that first great season he had last year, there was a lot of talk about, oh my God, Duke's going to lose him quickly. And I talked to people in higher up in athletics that said, if that happens, we'll have had 2 incredible years of football. So based on what had happened a few years before that, we'll take that, right? I mean, you'll take that kind of success if somebody wants to come hire your coach away after 2 years. So they were ready for this, but that doesn't mean they're happy about it because, like you said, Nina, there was terseness to her comments, and she parsed what she said a little bit, and she said
it was measured. It was
measured. Yeah,
measured. Yeah, I
we,
think. Yeah,
she reiterated the support for the program the university had until deep into the night, I believe her words or something to that effect, right?
Right. Yeah. No. How late was she talking with him? As
Yeah,
far as
it was after midnight. I mean, it was it was 1 o'clock in the morning before it was all done, and that he was going to go, and so they were right in. They were right in there, and they made the big. They gave him. They redid the contract last summer. They're redoing things in the O building. They're promising other upgrades to the program. The program was upgraded when Elko came in, right? With a lot of things, not just salary. That's just part of it. It's other areas of investment in the program and people, non-coaching positions, right? Funding those things, equipment, technology, that kind of stuff. So, I think she told him, look at all we've done, and we want to do more. They just can't do it all at the same time, all at once. And maybe that's what turned. I don't know, because A&M apparently can do everything all at once. I'm going to take a shot here, except win championships, because they haven't won a championship, and for all their money, they haven't done that. So anyway,
well, I don't want to keep digging A&M, but they're basically an 8-9 win a year program historically.
Sure.
And it's not going to get easier with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC. We already know that it's the greatest conference that God ever created per Feinbaum, but whatever. We can talk about whether that's true or not. Certainly the Big Ten is completely overrated, and it's strange. I like Nick Saban, his approach as a coach. It's hard not to. So I really hope they just beat Michigan like Michigan owes them money. I would just love that to happen. But the thing about the first firm that I worked at, there's an attorney there named Scott, who is, if I ever get in serious legal trouble, he is one of the 2 lawyers that I'm going to call right away. Okay. And Scott would he had this habit of getting involved in very large cases, very significant cases. Primarily, his clients had more money than they knew what to do with, and it caused them a lot of problems. I kind of feel like A&M is like that. A&M has too much money, and they don't understand how to handle the money that they have. So Elko, and I'll just, because my brother named him, and no, I'm not going to do that here. I'll do that later. But my brother came up with a joke name for him. I'm not going to do that here. But Elko might want to keep in mind that when you deal with clients who are, or in this case, your boss, who is like that, it could be problematic, right?
Yeah,
that could be a problem for him. One thing that I liked about what Nina King was doing, and terse might be the wrong word, disappointed, whatever. It gave off kind of, to go back to kind of what we started about the marriage analogy. It kind of reminded me of, hey, when your wife says, "Did you do fill in the blank?" and you're like, I forgot it. I didn't do it. I forgot to get it done. That was kind of the vibe I got from her. That level of "I'm fine," kind of a statement.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if you can talk about a little bit, if you're able to talk about it, what she was doing until about 1 a.m. to try to keep Elko in Durham.
I just know she was reiterating the support the university has for football, how important football is to the university, because there's that perception that basketball is more important. I mean, it's one more. There's no question. Duke is known more for basketball than football, but football is so important right now in college athletics, which is why the school has done what they've done over the last, since Cutcliffe came, really. All the changes to Pascal Fieldhouse, and we can go on and on. Everybody on this listen to this podcast knows all the facilities upgrades Duke has done to get it from the worst Division I program in America in 2007 to where we are now. to where they're going to 8 bowl games in the last 12 years or whatever it is, 12 seasons. That's pretty good. That's a long climb. And it's not winning league championships yet, but they're much closer now than they were, for God's sakes, 15 years ago. And so that's kind of what she was saying, was that this is important. You are important to us. This is important to us. We showed you how important you were to us last summer with the reworking of that deal. So that's about all you can do at that point.
Well, and you said the period of time that Duke had kind of ignored it. I've mentioned this before. I think it goes back to about the 70s. I think that the school got locked in a hiring model for a long time of, well, we just get the right coach, and that's really all we need. We don't need facilities. We don't need a commitment to having the right equipment. We don't need anything. And that really ended in 2008 or 7 when they hired David Cutcliffe. That's when that changed. We got lucky with Spurrier. And actually, I grew up, Goldsmith was the main coach I remember as a young guy in my teen years. I would like to see what he could have done with this financial commitment, because he did a heck of a lot better than the guys who came after him. And I'm not knocking Franks and Roof, but we as a program, the football program was ignored until 2008. Since 2008, I don't think you could make that argument. And of course, basketball is going to be more important at Duke. It's Duke, for God's sake. But it's not like the university doesn't care about the football program anymore. That's long gone, right?
Correct. From the top on down, from Vince Price, everybody else, and Dick Broadhead before him, and Kevin White got that good. He told me so many times, we have to do football right. We have to be in the game. You can't be, as all this conference changes happen and everything. Football drives the train, with money and all that stuff. And you can't have a seat at the table unless you're competent in football. And Duke is they're very competent in football now. And they weren't, 15 years ago. So that commitment is there, and it's not going to stop because they've gotten this far with it. And there's no sign that it's going to stop, because that's what the modern world is of college athletics. You have to be, a big time football program to be able to survive. And so, yes, those days are long gone. And Elko knew that. He knew that, but he sought a higher level of that. And that's what SEC schools can provide right now.
Right. But yeah, well, we go on for a long time about it. Why don't we talk about maybe who is next for Duke? We've seen rumors about who's interviewed. Manny Diaz has gotten his name's been floating around. Tony Gibson's name. You had mentioned, I think, the Marshall head coach, who I listened to a couple of his press conferences based on what you had said. I think it was on the OG podcast. Great podcast. People, listen to it if you don't already. And I was blown away by him. His, again, as a trial attorney, his ability to take over a room, to talk to people, to get his message out and control narratives. I listened to a couple of his press conferences. I was just blown away. I don't know if that's going to happen now because he hired an OC. Who knows? But who and where is Duke looking, and are we getting closer to maybe knowing who the next head coach is?
Yeah, I think, and just based on, last search took 12, 13 days. And this is about the time in it 2 years ago that it really started heating up, was like this Monday, Tuesday. I think by Friday we had Elko, the Friday of that week, Elko was named. And so, I think we're on the same track. I do know that, like, Jim Knowles probably isn't somebody that they're seriously looking at. I know his name was floated out there too. And that's somebody that they looked at, they like Jim. He was here forever, and he's just not, that's just not, he's probably a better coordinator, head coach.
Agree. But that's not a problem.
That's not a knock on him. I'm not knocking him at all.
No, he's a fantastic defensive coordinator, and he is most effective and best, I think, in the game of football being a defensive coordinator. And that's not a criticism. Some guys are great generals, they're not great politicians. Some guys are great politicians, they're not great generals. I made the Augustus and Agrippa comparison. He's the Agrippa to Augustus, and that's a fantastic thing. And that's why you saw Oklahoma State not look as great against Texas, because he's not there anymore, right?
Exactly right. So, but I do want to say this search is different than 2 years ago in that the program is in a much better place. Because of the work, because of what Elko did the last 2 years. For all that people upset about how he left and how we talked about that so much. That's all true, but he did a great job. And just like Elko said, Cutcliffe put it in a position for him to take it this place. Elko put it in a position for somebody else to come in and do a little better. So there's more a sense of, trying to keep this group together, because we haven't heard a whole lot of people say they're going with Elko yet, right? And so there's a chance, that's why the internal candidates are seriously being considered. Trooper's the interim coach. Trooper Taylor interviewed last time. He was interviewed as part of the source that produced Elko. He's a candidate again. Kevin Johns is a candidate. So you've got two other guys that were Adam Cushing was a head coach at Eastern Illinois when he left to become Duke's offensive line coach. So he's got head coaching experience. The Charles Huff thing, it's funny. 2 years ago, I heard the same things that you mentioned about how he commands the room. He's a great leader, smart guy. And the problem with him at that point was he'd only been a Marshall coach 1 year. He'd been at Alabama before that. He'd been in a lot of places as an assistant, literally learned a lot, but he was, just 1 year as a head coach at that level. And so it was almost like it was too soon. Well, now 2 years later, he's done some other things, and he went 6-6 this year. That's a problem, but he did beat Virginia Tech and he beat Notre Dame last year. So there's a lot of things to like about Charles Huff. I don't know right now where they stand with him. To me, that would be a terrific hire. But if you're trying to keep the band together, maybe you need to hire somebody that the people here are really comfortable with, and maybe they'll agree to stay. Which again, that was different than 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you were totally cleaning house. You were starting from scratch, except for Trooper was retained, but he was the only guy, right? Everything else was pretty much floor to ceiling, tear down and rebuild.
Well, do you have any sense of where Nina King and the administration are leaning right now? Who maybe, obviously you start out at the beginning with a list of 12, 15 names, whoever, and then it gets whittled down, it gets narrowed. Where are we on that? Can you give us like 4 or 5 names, or is it like a state secret, like the Pentagon Papers were?
Yeah, I wish I could. I don't have the precision on reporting right now on that. I'm sorry, Ben. I really wish I did.
It's okay. It's okay. Steve, you don't have to apologize. You don't have to. You don't have to come on this podcast, and B, I always enjoy our conversation, so that's fine. It's just, okay. So I personally don't follow recruiting news and updates, because it's a great way to get it committed to an insane asylum. And I kind of feel like this is like that for you guys. I'm following the message boards and, where I'm subscribed, and it's just, it's wild, So,
Right.
but talk about, you said Knowles may not be a serious candidate. Have you heard anything else about Manny Diaz? Because he and Feely, and you mentioned, the staff seems like it's pretty well staying together. Is Diaz a possibility? And then B, is Duke having a conversation about how interested are you with keeping the staff together with these candidates?
Yeah, that's important. That's a big part of this. Because you want to try to retain this, because that's NILs and the transfer portal are different now than they were 2 years ago. 2 years ago, NIL had just become legal in NCAA parlance, and so now it's more that ecosystem is set up better. So you need to do things to retain guys. Whereas 2 years ago, yeah, they could be in the transfer portal and all that, but it was a different dynamic. So you have to have these conversations with candidates that you didn't have to have 2 years ago, and that is part of this. And so yeah, Diaz and David Feely do know each other, and could that help? We know how much we know how the players love David Feely, right? And so that's why Elko would like to take him to Texas A&M, I'm sure. But if you want to try to retain players, and the culture that's built here is built on that work they did in the offseason in the weight room. So Elko said his number one top hire was David Feely before anybody else. That's what he did. So if Duke can somehow retain him, and then next head coach agrees to retain him, that's an important thing. So yeah, that's certainly a factor.
Well, hopefully we'll hear of someone soon. But we were supposed to have this conversation yesterday evening, and what was really funny was about a year ago I was monitoring where Duke's going to go to the bowl game, and I saw like 3 or 4 tweets come out of people saying we think it's going to be the Military Bowl, and I put out some joke that said basically I read a bunch of tweets, so it looks like this is where Duke is going, and I tagged David Harding in it, and he said, "Well, I didn't say that." And I was like, "No, Dave, I'm sorry. This was a joke. I wasn't serious. This was just a joke. I was just kidding." And it blew up, and this whole thing, and that's how Connor and I got in touch, and why he's come on the podcast. It was about, he said, "You got to wait till it's official." And I said, "Well, wait, what do you mean by that?" So we started messaging everybody about it, and he and I started messaging back and forth, and we've gotten to know each other since then, which I appreciate. My screw up led to something good. But yesterday, when Brett McMurphy says sources, and this is paraphrasing, sources, Gasparilla Bowl, Duke, and UCF, I said, looks great, but I'm waiting until it's official. And I had someone on the team actually message me and said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, look, you got to wait till the school announces it. I learned the hard way." Okay. And other people were like, "Hey, McMurphy said it. You're good." I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to wait till it's official." And sure enough, it wasn't the case. I got my tickets to Birmingham. I think I'm going to rent a car and drive down there. I'm going to have a good time. Dad, don't wuss out. You're coming. Okay. So you and I were supposed to talk last night.
Yes.
But you messaged me and said, "I don't think I can make it. We got a late Zoom call with Trooper. This is getting out of hand with the timing of getting this confirmed when it was confirmed Duke was going to go to the Birmingham Bowl." Can you tell us what happened with the Gasparilla Bowl and then how it ended up being the Birmingham Bowl?
Yeah, I had heard Birmingham tied to Duke a few days ago, before, long before Sunday. And at that point, I was told the Sun Bowl and Birmingham are among the possibilities. That was if Florida State had made the playoff, right? And then that opens up the ReliaQuest Bowl too. So that's 2 slots, because that's a little complicated with that bowl in Tampa. If a Big Ten team plays the ACC in the Orange Bowl, the ACC gets to go to the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa. Okay, so that didn't happen because it ended up being Georgia and Florida State in the Orange. But anyway, so that's 2 slots that it moved everybody down. And the tier 2 bowls, the Sun Bowl is in that group. Duke got knocked down below basically tier 3, which is, Birmingham, military, all those on the bottom end, Gasparilla, so that's how that all came out. And the Sun Bowl never thought they were going to get Notre Dame. Nobody thought Notre Dame was going to drop out of tier 1. Notre Dame never drops out of tier 1, right? I mean, they were going to get one of those Florida bowls, and they ended up, or even Holiday Bowl in San Diego. So that's how that all dropped down. And then in the end, they really didn't want to have a rematch, Central Florida, UCF. It's very rare that bowls do that. It does happen. I remember about 20 years ago, South Carolina and Ohio State played in back-to-back Outback Bowls. 2 years
great.
In the same bowl. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. So, there was some doubt about that. And so that's how it ended up Duke ended up in Birmingham in the end. And so, but even when, when it was being reported that it was going to happen, I checked on it with people I know at Duke that are involved in the negotiations that said, that's a possibility. It's there, but it's not done. This is not, there's still too many things going on. Because at that point, we didn't know who was going to those tier 2 bowls. I mean, none of those had been finalized. And so those all had to shake out before the schools underneath that, Georgia Tech and all the schools that end up being Duke in that group too, before they could end up in their slots. And so there was a big battle going on for, Notre Dame and North Carolina and all those, Clemson ended up at the Gator Bowl. That all had to shake out before Duke and those guys could get, but really, gosh, it shouldn't take till 7:00 at night on Bowl Sunday to figure out what we're doing. And that's why I felt bad having to reschedule us because, I really, when we agreed to that, I thought, well, surely the heck it'll be done by no later than 4:00. Last year, I think it was done about 4:00.
That's when it usually, that's when it usually happens. Cause like I've had trials that I'm driving to that are starting Monday and I'm driving like an hour, 2.5 hours away, whatever. And I'm listening on the radio to bowl updates, and so I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. So this was unusual. It sounded like the ACC really didn't think Florida State wasn't going to make it to the playoff. And so they had their slots, like I said earlier, everybody moving up to, and, because Notre Dame and Carolina would have all been, and NC State would have been taking up those tier 1 bowls, the Pop-Tarts and the Gator and that. And it didn't happen. And so that messed everything up. And so, again, we talk about this bad couple of days here for the ACC. This is part of it too, because, you really look bad when you're scrambling to get, you have 11 teams in bowls, which is what you want, right? You have all these bowl tie-ins. So all your teams have a home. So nobody's left out in the cold, because the last thing you want is one of your 6-6 teams not to go to a bowl because there's nobody wants them, or there's not, your slots that get filled up or whatever. And so there should have been a contingency plan here. Somebody up there in the main office, didn't communicate with the schools right, and the bowls, they're all working in tandem with each other to make it work out best. And, just, it looked botched for it to go that deep into the night.
Well, was it a combo of the FSU debacle, travesty, whatever word you want to use for it? I mean, I could do a whole episode about that. And actually, I've got someone we may do next week to talk more about bowl season. But was it that and our abusive relationship that we're in with Notre Dame that complicated all of this? And again,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I look, people who listen to this know how I feel about Notre Dame. That is a one-sided abusive relationship in favor of Notre Dame. It does not help the actual ACC members. So just kind of walk us through how those two schools, FSU shafted, Notre Dame, whatever, how that impacted everybody else.
Right. Because if Florida State goes to the playoff, Louisville automatically goes to the Orange Bowl. And that would have freed up, they could have played Ohio State there. If the Big Ten's in the Orange Bowl, then that ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa becomes a possibility. That's a bigger payout, a better bowl game for Notre Dame to play at, right? Or whoever, Carolina State, Clemson was kind of on the cusp of that. So when those two didn't happen, that knocked everybody down. So then Florida State goes to the Orange Bowl, and the Orange Bowl takes Georgia. They got a chance to have Georgia, which is a great matchup for them on the surface. And now, do the teams want to be there and play? I don't know. That's a whole nother matter. But on the surface, it's a heck of a matchup. So the ReliaQuest is no longer available because the Big Ten's not playing in the Orange Bowl. So you take that off the table. And so then, then they're battling the Pop-Tarts, the Gator, the Holiday. They're all battling for, who's going to go where. And NC State at 9-3, anybody who's 7-5 can't pass them in the bowl order. So they were up there high. Nobody could knock them off the mountain. They were going to go in that tier 1. And so the Pop-Tarts Bowl is where they wanted to be, and it's where they ended up. So good for NC State. They got what they wanted. I know they complain a lot about the way they're treated, the way they're Their fans think they're persecuted. But they got what they wanted. That's another subject, right? But no, that worked out for them. And I knew that if Carolina was available, Charlotte, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
Now they would have had to fall out of tier 1 into tier 2, which is Duke's Mayo was part of that tier 2 grouping. But that's what ended up happening, because the Gator Bowl took Clemson, a team that they're not usually able to get. For many years now, Clemson's been in the playoff or higher up, right? So here's a great fan base that travels well. Gator Bowl is a great bowl for Clemson. They're going to sell tickets like crazy and to go there, and it's going to be wonderful. So that's why I thought that we heard about Miami to the Sun. That was one thing that was talked about a lot earlier. They ended up in the Pinstripe Bowl. And the Sun ended up with Notre Dame, which this is one instance where Notre Dame didn't get what they wanted, which is kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah, I know, you're golf clap.
Yeah.
Everybody feels sorry for Notre Dame for not getting what they wanted, right?
I shouldn't rant here, because the reason I started doing the podcast was A, COVID happened, and B, I enjoy these conversations. But Notre Dame gets all the benefit from being in the ACC. The ACC does not get a benefit from Notre Dame.
Right.
I don't think adding the 3 schools that we added is actually a problem. And the reason is because everybody's complaining about money. That's the only way you can get more money in the conference. So, that's fine. But I mean, losing out on bowl money is a problem. And that does not help. And, I mean, we've got again, we need leadership, and Jim Phillips, I don't think is much of a leader. But talk to us about, is Duke going to be able to field a team for the Birmingham Bowl? And I say that not entirely in jest, because in addition to the other folks who are entering in the transfer portal, I saw Dorian Mausi has put his name in. Do we have enough guys to put a team on the field to play a really good Troy team?
Yeah, that's going to be a question, right? Because RJ Oben's already in the portal. Aeneas Peebles.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I'm sorry. And then Dorian, that's three defensive starters, 3 key guys. And, I don't know about on the offensive side. Of course, we know Riley's gone. Henry Beelan, I don't know if he'll be healthy or not still. He's still got that shoulder issue it's been a big problem. It may take all off season for him to get better from that. So we may have Grayson playing quarterback, but
I think that's okay though.
At this point, yeah, that's fine. He's proven. And they got a month to get him ready with whoever the coach is. But Graham Barton is going to the NFL. Will he want to play? You could make a case to where he shouldn't, right? He's getting a first round grade. Why would you go out there and risk somebody rolling up on your ankle or your knee or something? But he might play. I don't know about that yet, but yeah, there's a lot of guys going, but they've got a lot of guys that, backup guys that, you can play your redshirt freshman can technically play in the bowl game. Doesn't count against their clock to lose their red shirt. I mean, if you had to fill in, I'm talking about backfilling special teams and whatever, that's what we're talking about here. So that may be where they have to go. So yeah, it's going to be a different team. And that's kind of where we are with bowl games now, right? Guys opt out, guys go in the transfer portal, coaches, even if they're not gone yet, they're like, the heck with you. You're gone. We don't want you back. It's kind of rough.
Is that going to be Trooper's approach, or is he going to say, if you want to play, you can play? Because Franklin, I think, has said he's going to play one more game. I don't know about Carter. I assume he's going to play. I can't imagine he's not going to. Is Trooper going to say, because all signs look like Trooper will coach the bowl game.
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to say, look, if you want to play, play?
Yeah, I don't know that yet. But he seems like the type of guy that would want to do that. And I think Dwayne Carter will play. I'll be surprised if he doesn't play. Right now, he's kind of on that. He's on a circuit of traveling around getting awards. He just got the Tatum Award.
Great guy.
Charlotte.
Great guy.
Yeah, he's out in Vegas this week for some other awards for academics and athletics. He's
interviewing head coaching candidates. Hopefully,
you could do worse than having him talk to him, right?
Right.
Three-time captain. He knows the culture of this program. He should be involved in the search with the search committee. Hope they're doing that. But yeah, so I think Dwayne will play that. So you'll get some guys. And then there's some guys that maybe were a little banged up that maybe will be able to play now. Miles Jones, Al Blades are two guys that this will be their last college game. So, losing Miles halfway through the year was a tough break, really tough break. And I think knowing a little bit about his injury that he should be healthy by the time 23rd comes along if he chooses to play one more game for Duke.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Miles Jones, and I bring this up because I'm reading Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic campaign right now. Okay, if you're wondering how cool I was, that answers that question. I bring that up because I remember Caesar's such a fascinating historical character, right? There's just a lot of interesting things about him, but a dictator and an authoritarian. But his statement about fortune favoring the bold, I think, really applies well to Miles. And boy, if we could have found a way to buck history and have him be healthy all season, that would have been just a great pickup. And I hate that it didn't work out for him here at Duke with his health. But I've messaged with a bunch of people about this. I said, in retrospect, maybe we should have targeted somebody else in the portal. But I can understand why you would want that guy to play, because if you can keep him healthy, he is unbelievable.
I follow Pro Football Focus and use it's one of my evaluation tools. I use them when I'm talking about voting on all conference teams or whatever, just one of them. But he was Duke's highest rated cover corner. He was a shutdown corner when he was in the game. And we saw he had a couple of interceptions early before all his injuries started hitting it again. And, it would have gotten to the point where people wouldn't have thrown to his side, almost like the old Deion Sanders type, that whole half of the field is shut down. And that's what was happening. And then when you have that as a defensive coach, that allows you to maneuver everything elsewhere. And so it was, it's a gamble that, I think Elko would take again. Obviously, he knew Miles. He'd been a couple of years and not been healthy, but when he played for him, he played really well. And, you just tried to get him through a whole season. And what's really sad is he was really playing well, and the injury happened in practice. That's the thing. It just kind of ran in, kind of hurt his arm in practice, and just a tough break. Of all the things that had gone wrong in his career, for that to be the one that knocked him out to where he couldn't get healthy again, really was tough.
Yeah, to think about him and Blades and Chandler Rivers, and Chandler's that dude. I mean, all three of them all year would have just been amazing. So the Birmingham Bowl should be a lot of fun. People who are listening, find a way to go. I'm renting a car. I don't want to try to fly back on December 24th. I'm going to drive back. And hopefully, I'll be able to pick up Dad and my brother, and we'll go together and have a good time. I'm excited for these guys. Part of the reason that I want to go is this group has meant a lot to the program, and I just feel like, I'm going to drive down to Birmingham and see them off. And, maybe they wanted to go to the Gasparilla. Maybe things have been different. They go somewhere else, but dang it, these guys mean a lot to this program. And I just feel like I want to see them off. And be there for him. Freddie, over at Blue Devils blog, I'll see you there. Hopefully, you and your wonderful wife. But let's go support these guys. Okay, let's go support these guys. It's Christmas. You got family coming to town. Nobody likes their family. Just skip out for a day or two.
You can be back by the holiday. That's the good thing about this bowl being on the 23rd.
I tell you, if they'd gone to Gasparilla, though, I could have flown. There's a direct flight from Roanoke to Tampa every morning. So I could have flown down that morning, come back the next day, bam. It would have been perfect. Well, Steve, we've been talking for a long time. This has been great. Whenever you come on, it's always great. Whenever you're on the OG podcast, it's always great. I always enjoy a chance to talk with you. But I want to give you an open mic like I give to everybody. Feel free to talk about whatever you want about. And if you just happen to get a text message telling you who the next Duke head coach is, let's just drop that in there,
Yeah.
Let's just throw that out there.
While we're talking, let's see here. No, nothing's coming in yet. So, but it's right here next to me. Believe me, I'm monitoring it a lot.
No. I've seen your phone, and when I do this with guys who cover other teams, they get all kinds of messages, and they're, and I get it. It doesn't bother me at all. I get it.
It's
So
one of those things, man.
yeah,
But I appreciate you giving me I appreciate you having me on. I always enjoy being on your pod, and
thank you.
yeah, it's great what you do and the work you do on this podcast for the Duke football family. Basketball's going on. I know football is got a basketball team's lost 2 games in a row. We mentioned me going to Arkansas and Atlanta. That didn't work out very well for Duke. So, got to see what's going on with Tyrese Proctor's injury. That'll be something to watch. I fear that might be not a short-term thing, given what I saw and the crutches he was on leaving the arena. So, that'll be something we're going to be watching this week. Duke needs to, basketball they need to find their identity. They're kind of lacking that toughness that we usually get from Duke basketball. And so they're going to have to, they have a week off here until they play Charlotte. Only four games this month remaining, all of December. Charlotte, Hofstra, Baylor, and Queens. So there's some time for them to get things right. So that's one thing I'll be working on quite a bit is basketball. And then, I think we'll have a coaching press conference pretty soon here. I would think I'll be surprised if we don't know by the end of the week, obviously, what's going on with that. And we'll see which direction Art and Nina King, and of course Art Chase is the football administrator for Duke. He and Nina are kind of running this search. So we'll see what direction they go. But that's what we're working on right now. I hope to get some rest once this is done. let the kids, the players study for finals and all that, right? Give me, they can study for finals, no games. I can just take a little break. I need to catch up on some sleep, especially after that Elko night. I'm gonna call it the Elko night. When that went on. But getting ready for the end of the season. And of course the transfer portal is going crazy, right? And Duke's got to get a head coach so they can try to attract some players. And that's going to be part of it too. They got to try to retain the recruiting class. Tyler Cherry, the big quarterback recruit, is up for Mr. Football in Indiana. He was named the top quarterback in the state. So if they can retain him, that's going to be going a long way toward what we talked about earlier about that quarterback room. But with Riley moving on, they got to try to have room for Tyler Cherry to come in and try to retain him. So that's something else we're going to be watching very closely heading up to December 20th, which is signing day.
All right. You brought up basketball, so I'm just going to ask you about this. I don't think it's so much the identity that Duke's lacking. One, I don't think that the offense that we're running is sensible. There's too many people standing around. Too much. I call it maybe a 2-3 or 1-4, where basically one guy's trying to do everything with an occasional screen. But I also think the real problem is, and maybe I'm crazy. There's two big issues in addition to the way we're running the offense. We haven't got a set rotation yet, and I feel like athletes in particular have to be comfortable. They have to know what's expected of them. And this team has not figured out its rotation, and I think that's causing some problems. I also think we just don't have a guy like a Mark Williams or a Lively. So we're having to move a guy who maybe should be a 3.5 or a 4 position, flip to a 5. And I think the world of Ryan Young, but he's not going to be able to control the paint like Lively or Williams was.
Of course not.
Right. And because we don't, and that's not a knock on him.
It's who he is. Yes.
Correct. He's a come off the bench, give you some energy guy.
Right.
Okay. And that's
great
fine.
Locker room guy. Incredible locker room guy.
You need him on the team.
Yes.
Reeves has not developed into, I'm trying to be careful with how I say this because I don't want to be critical of him. He doesn't seem to have that dog in him yet. Okay. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy, like, to go back to football, Reggie Love was, where he would push Brendan Haywood around.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys remember that, Love came in and he just started pushing Brendan Haywood around. 6-inch height differential. He didn't care. Okay. He was going to move him. Elton Brand, same kind of guy. You would see Elton Brand looking at the camera when Haywood was trying to guard him, and Elton's just shaking his head no. Reeves hasn't developed that yet.
Right.
But TJ Power, great name, makes me think of Max Power from The Simpsons. Okay. He needs to get more minutes because he can shoot. Um, but I think we got too many point guards, and that's causing a lot of problems. So I don't want to say not having Proctor is a good thing because Proctor has that dog. He and Roach both have that dog in.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the problem is we got too many point guards. And if we take one out or change the rotation some, that might be helpful. Okay. And I know I gave you an open mic, which is normally when I wrap up, but I'm gonna break that and ask you
Okay.
your thoughts on what I just said about the basketball team.
It makes a lot of sense. And last year when Roach got hurt, Proctor grew as a player. And like you just said, that's not a knock on Roach. It's just that when Roach wasn't out there, Proctor was like, okay, I can do this. I can do that. I have freedom to do these things that they weren't telling me he couldn't do them, but it's just impossible when there's this veteran guy there. So now that Proctor is going to be out, there's a chance for Caleb Foster to get minutes. There's a chance for McCain to do more things. Roach will be who he is, and we know what he is going to be. And he scored 22 at Georgia Tech, so he produced well that way. It's a time for growth for this team. And had Roach not gotten hurt last year it was November when he first got hurt with that toe, Duke doesn't grow into the team that wins 10 games in a row at the end of the year and wins the ACC championship. So that's a good way to look at this. Again, I mentioned that they only have 4 games in December. Even if Proctor's out, a month or 6 weeks or whatever, which I don't know for sure, but I just kind of speculating a little bit. He's only going to miss maybe, I don't know, 6 games, maybe 8. It's not as bad as what it sounds, right? 4 to 6 weeks sounds like half the season, but it's not if you do it in December. So that could help. That could help this team in practice. And again, nobody's happy that he got hurt. Please,
No,
nobody,
not at all.
misunderstand what we're saying
not.
here. But if you're looking at, okay, where the team is now and what they need to do, they need more cohesion on offense. They only had 11 assists against Georgia Tech. And Shire said after the game, we should be a team that has 20 assists at least a night, every game. They're not sharing the ball well at all.
But you don't have a guy. You don't have a guy in the paint that you can lob to like you had the last 2 years.
Right.
And Flip is fantastic, but he's not that guy to be a 5 and hover around the paint and clean it up.
Right.
Neither is Young, and Mitchell plays like a 4, but doesn't have the body of a 4.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So it's I'm not as upset about this when I was watching the Georgia Tech game. I mean, Duke should have won that game. No knock on Georgia Tech, but a cheap technical call on Mitchell. I mean, come on. I mean,
totally
go back and watch games from the 80s with the Celtics and the Pistons.
Yeah,
I mean, that's nothing. Okay.
Right.
That's, I'm sorry, but this team as constructed may not be able to gel. And I don't think that people should be negative about Shire about that. It's just, it's hard to replace a guy like Williams and Lively every year.
And they looked at bringing in a transfer portal a center. They talked to, there's a lot of guys they were involved with in the offseason. But the problem was they had 4 starters coming back, and one of them was Flip. And so these guys in the transfer portal, they not only want NIL money, which we mentioned earlier, they want, okay, what are you going to do to help me get to the league? Are you going to, is it offense going to run through me? Well, no, it wasn't. It's not going to run through. It's not. No matter who they brought in. I guess Hunter Dickinson maybe, but if they would add him, but so then it was a very difficult thing. They wanted somebody to come in and be kind of a role player, and it's hard to attract somebody to be a role player, right? I mean, Ryan Young is a role player, and they got him 2 years ago. And he does what he does, but he's limited. He'll admit that. It's fine. They need, somebody else a little better than him, but it was just impossible. It proved to be impossible to attract that kind of person when you couldn't offer them a key role in the offense and what they were doing.
Yeah, but you need a guy like Ryan Young on your team to win.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, and you have to have guys like Mitchell who can play really good defense
Right.
and clear up some of those rebounds and put them back. So, on the basketball, let's hope they use this time to kind of gel, get a little more cohesive, figure this out, work on the rotation. Shire, I know you're listening. I think you were born on August 24. I'm an August 23 guy myself, so we've got that connection. We've got it. But Steve, this is a great talk as always. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to the next time we get to do this, folks. Stay tuned to our podcast. Got some other stuff lined up. Working on a Troy beat writer to come on to preview that program. On my YouTube TV, I've got the Sun Belt Conference Championship game recorded. I'm going to watch that. Follow us on our website. Check us out on Twitter. Listen to our podcast. Send me an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. Let's beat Troy in that bowl game. Let's give these seniors a great win to close out their Duke career. And guys, hey, everybody, every Duke fan out here who listens to this podcast, let's just say it all together. As always, go Duke.